Emerce eDay podcast. Vanuit de Kromhouthal in Amsterdam is dit de Emerce eDay podcast. Met Jente Kater en Krijn Schuurman.
Ja, Krijn, zitten we dan? Emerce 2017. Het is weer een mooi aan het worden. Als je even terugkijkt naar vorige idee's, welke naam blijft jou nou bij?
Nou, ik dacht aan Pixar en ik begreep dat er al meer mensen dat doen.
Dat had ik ook, ja.
Maar misschien omdat, we hebben het natuurlijk vaak over commercie en over technologie. En Pixar is dan toch iets wat je, het kinderlijke in je aanspreekt van iets creëren is toch eigenlijk het mooiste. Althans, ik vind mensen die iets kunnen creëren, heb ik altijd de meeste bewondering voor.
Ja,
Dus
ja.
dat...
En de belangrijkste les die ik mij daarvan herinner was diplomatie. Als je creatie doet, diplomatie is het belangrijkste wat er is, wil je iets heel moois krijgen. Ja,
en kleine stapjes. Maar daar kan je ook echt wel je les trekken van hoe doe ik dat morgen in de boardroom als ik weer een goed idee moet verkopen. Dus eens.
En vandaag deze idee, welke namen zijn het die jij echt wil zien vandaag?
Nou, waar ik naar uitkeek is dan toch, even kijken hoe die ook weer heette, de ex-Facebook man die het boek heeft geschreven. En het is eigenlijk gek dat we dan, we kunnen genoeg mensen interviewen die bij Facebook werken, maar als dan iemand daar weggaat er een boek over schrijft, dan zijn we allemaal heel opgewonden.
Dan wordt het sappig. Scott Coleman. Nee, Scott Coleman is van Pinterest. Antonio Garcia Martinez.
Yes, dat is hem. Ja. Ook misschien omdat Facebook wel het meest gehate en het meest gebruikte platform tegelijkertijd is. Dat fascineert toch wel, ja.
We're going to switch to English because we have Brian Hoffman in the studio from Openbazaar. Some say if you want to make real money, you shouldn't be in e-commerce anymore. But I think you don't agree.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's an interesting shift in technology with Bitcoin and blockchain, especially in e-commerce, which is something that hasn't kind of been adopted yet. There's been some companies that have dabbled with it and tried it, but they end up kind of abandoning it because I don't think they're taking advantage of the true power of what Bitcoin and blockchain can bring.
Perhaps it's wise to briefly introduce Openbazaar, because there are probably still some listeners that don't know Openbazaar yet. So can you state it briefly?
Yeah, so Openbazaar is a decentralized peer-to-peer network that allows people to buy and sell anything, anywhere, from anyone around the globe, completely free, and it uses Bitcoin.
So it's totally decentralized, like we used from peer-to-peer file sharing 20 years ago, and still?
Yes.
So there's not the eBay on top of it?
Exactly. So whereas eBay, you visit eBay, which they run, and you buy things from other people through their marketplace, this marketplace consists entirely of people talking to each other directly. Yeah.
And if it's if anyone can install it and start buying or exchanging or selling stuff, where are you then in that model?
We're proudly not in the model, other than building the code that runs the marketplace. So I run a business called OB1, which is venture-backed, like other startups, but we don't control the marketplace. We purely staff people that work on the protocol, on the software itself. It's all open source. We coordinate with the community. We do a lot of the stuff around managing, building it.
But then the question of Jente, then where's the money?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's a really great question. And I think a lot of blockchain companies are starting to ask. We're in a very early research and development type phase in blockchain where people are just throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks. Yeah. They're not to the point where they have mature business models yet. When we started, the idea was just to back up, our investors are big investors in, they were the primary investors in Etsy, Twitter, in Facebook. Mark Andreessen, who's created Netscape, is one of our investors, and they understand what happens when network effects come about. So it may seem tiny at one user, but when you get to 1 million users, the value of that network grows immensely. So their thought is, if an Openbazaar grows to have millions of users doing tons of commerce, there's going to be opportunities to get to provide valuable services to those users and generate revenue that way. Rather than focus on the revenue now, it's focusing on the technology that will drive to that growth, that network growth. So
at the next level, when you're bigger, then there might be additional services that they can make revenue out of.
Yeah, so like there's a whole bunch of different things we're looking at. One really interesting thing that we're really excited about is it's a capability called channels, which is the idea behind that is it's very similar to a Pinterest pin board. So a user with an Openbazaar is looking around and finding all kinds of interesting items from around the globe. They can curate sort of a pin board, so to speak, for lack of terminology, and curate those listings and share those lists with other people. And if they drive traffic to those merchants through their lists, they can generate revenue that way. And so it starts to create an incentive structure for people to actually curate the marketplace itself.
Yeah, and that kind of interaction works. We see that at Pinterest, I agree. But then there should be a sort of mix of peer-to-peer sellers and also maybe commercial vendors of stuff. That could be the next phase. Okay. So, and how big is it now? I mean, in terms of people that use it?
We've had about 500,000 downloads over the last year and a half or so, but we really see users in the 10 to 20,000 users range. It's not a massive network, but when you look at what it is required to use the software, you have to like download it, install it. There's a much higher level of friction than just visiting a website. So for a buyer, for instance, he has to download an app to buy something, which is not something people really want. And in the future, we plan to have a web and a mobile version, but right now, there's a lot of friction still, you know.
Yep. So. And I mentioned eBay already. Is that actually one of the competitors? Is it in the future? Do you see you have several marketplaces, and this is one of them, Openbazaar?
Well, I think those marketplaces are going to be hard to break up, obviously, because they have such a advantage. And when people think to list items, they go for the biggest, broadest market of customers. But if I was able to open up a global marketplace that brought billions of people, potentially to you, then maybe you start to think that those marketplaces are the smaller ones. And I think as the rest of the world catches on to cryptocurrencies, they are allowed to avoid their local currencies, which may have problems and all this stuff. There's going to be this open new market that they can't get to through an eBay. Yeah. Because if you're selling in Argentina, you're not going to just hop on an eBay and find a guy selling, custom quilts or something from that area of the world. But with Openbazaar, it's all possible.
Yeah, so that's an advantage, but it's also a great dependency, because you say once people start to pick up and use the blockchain or Bitcoin. Yeah. But that still needs to happen, right?
Yeah, it's that's a big if, right? With blockchain and Bitcoin, I think that most people still doubt that it can be something really massive, and they don't know.
Or they don't understand, maybe.
Or they don't understand because it's very technical. But see, I think a lot of technology starts out very difficult, right? The internet started out very hard to use, and it was text-based, and then it got to the point where it was much more mainstream friendly. I mean, one of the big goals of our project is to bring a product that you can't differentiate between this and using like an eBay. Like, it should be that simple. Like, even though it's using blockchain underneath, you shouldn't really have to think, oh, now I'm using this really difficult blockchain technology. It should just work.
Agree.
So
once you go to that stage, then you say you have a certain maturity level. I just use this marketplace, and I pay with Bitcoin, but that's the only difference.
Yeah. I mean, there are nuances that are still have to be worked out. Challenges because Bitcoin is so new and it hasn't solved all of its issues. So, PayPal, you can pretty much generally trust that payment is going to go through every time. But imagine it got lost every once in a while. You'd be like, this is not very reliable.
So you're hoping for that, right?
Yeah.
To malfunction.
Yeah. But Bitcoin does that from time to time, like, because it's just so new. And it's hard for users to wrap their head around it. Nonetheless, move their entire business to that. Like, they want what's easy and reliable.
So, and is there any particular reason? I mean, is it thinkable that you would allow PayPal, or is that just against your principles maybe somewhere?
No, I think from our perspective, we'd love to be Bitcoin in every payment. Like, payment is just a piece of it. And we actually designed it so that it's not like if Bitcoin was removed, you could easily put like Stripe or PayPal or something in there. You could. Now, there are downsides to that, because if you have a problem, now you have to go and reveal your information to Stripe, and you have to deal with their department and all that, or they may ban Openbazaar because they don't like the vendors on it or something. So there's like its own set of challenges. But Bitcoin is completely permissionless, so we avoid any of those situations, right? Like no one can say, I'm not going to let this guy sell or buy or whatever. It's just up to the users. So
you could leave it up to the users, right?
Yeah.
And it's also anonymous, right?
It can be, and it can not be. We allow users to use it through anonymous technologies like Tor, if they want to be completely private.
Yep.
But there are some limitations to what they can do. People who are not completely anonymous can't buy from them because it's like they're on almost like a different network because they're hidden. So it kind of limits their business to people that are willing to be super secret. But yeah, you can do both. I think most people tend to stay in the clear. We see like the majority of our users will stay in the normal internet.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's funny because you have this service, ticket swap, I think it's called, when you buy concert tickets and you can't go, then you can swap them. But it's quite risky to buy tickets the same day as the concert. Mm-hmm. And ticket swap you can only use it if you log in with your Facebook, because then I can check that you're a real person. So in a way it feels nice not to be known, but in another context it's nice that you know it's a real person and you don't get screwed. So I'm figuring out if it's an advantage or a disadvantage that people can be anonymous, but I can still agree or not agree to do business with someone, right? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's kind of one of the biggest principles of Openbazaar is that we want to give the users more choice about that. It's not about saying that like identity is not important or real identity is not important. It is very important. If you're buying a house, you may not want to give $500,000 to someone who you don't know. But in some cases, when you're buying a T-shirt, there's no reason why I should have to give, my firstborn child's social security number to get it. So there's a long way to go to build reputation systems that can support anonymous users. But that's a really big part of it, and we want to build a trustworthy marketplace, not just a wild west. And so this is what we're going to be working on a lot.
I think you are attracting innovators right now. A small group of people with special questions and special products. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a very weird marketplace, I will admit, because it's just I think a lot of people who are serious about e-commerce already have like a very mature flow, right? Like they have a Shopify that gets a fulfillment system and a shipping system integrated, and they and a marketing campaign, and like that doesn't exist on Openbazaar, so it's very hard for them to say, oh, let's just move over. So we start to attract like really people that are like on the edge of like they're doing weird stuff. Like for instance, there's one guy in China who lives really close to a factory, and they make a bunch of like products that are, you would know if you were buying them in your grocery store, but like he can go to them and say, hey, make these, don't put logos on them, we'll sell underwear, that has no brand. And he can do it insanely cheaply. So he sets up a service where you contact him, you tell him what you're looking for, he goes to the factories that actually makes them and gets them, and he can provide it to you at a very, very cheap cost, and he accepts it through Bitcoin. And so, services like that, I just don't even know how you would offer something like that on another platform.
But what you're saying now is illegal, isn't it?
That in that case, I'm not really sure exactly what the limitations are on that. But there are all kinds of different areas that are gray, and jurisdiction is a big one, which is another big reason why we don't really want to be a policeman for the network as well. We let the users empower that because it is difficult. It is difficult for an eBay or an Amazon to like regulate all that, right? They have to understand the local jurisdiction, their laws, what's allowed there, what's not allowed.
They are the facilitator. I mean, maybe for the judge. That could be also the case with your platform, but probably less because it's a peer-to-peer technology.
Yeah.
The first thing people think, I think, is that it's like darknet stuff. But I read the number one product exchanged on your platform is food, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you should tell that maybe.
Yeah, I mean, food's another interesting one. There are lots of laws around food sales too, right? For instance, in the U.S., it's very hard to purchase like raw milk. It hasn't been pasteurized because of the laws. Now, many people don't feel like that's bad. They trust it, but eBay won't let you sell that. It'll probably get removed from other places, and yet it's not illegal necessarily. So, there are some but those are niche situations. Food in general is really popular because, they're just looking for another avenue to sell their products to. I've bought cookies from here and stuff.
Comic books are read in the top 3.
Yeah.
Is there a particular reason? Yeah.
I don't know what the fascination is with comic books. Collectors, I think, tend to be Bitcoiners as well.
Maybe. Yeah.
Like trading cards and comic books. They're all, they like technology and stuff. And so, yeah, we've seen a lot of that. I mean, thousands of comic books. It's pretty crazy, yeah.
So, of course, in your mind, you have where you want it to be heading. I think you just said mainstream success. Is that so? It should be mainstream in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to create a marketplace where everybody wants to use it for anything. I've said before, this is just a protocol. So we've built one example of a marketplace that could be built on top of Openbazaar. But we would love to see somebody build an Airbnb type of service where maybe it was just focused on housing and underneath it was Openbazaar, but you didn't really know that. It just felt like Airbnb. Or an Uber. You could do an Uber. Same kind of thing. And you just use cryptocurrency. And the cool thing is that you're not extracting any kind of fees from your drivers. I mean, imagine if you could drive for Uber but not have to pay the 30% fee. It's pretty insane to think that would be possible, but it can be. It can be.
So you are building your shop and you have to market it. And I think you have to market it in a special way. Is there a special ingredient or recipe?
No. Do you have the recipe? We'd like to use it. No, I mean, when it comes to marketing, we've done several interesting marketing campaigns trying to see how people think about Bitcoin and marketplaces. And one interesting thing is that the average person does not care about Bitcoin at all. They don't respond at all. Those campaigns almost are it's a joke because they don't care. But within Bitcoiners, it's very intensely anticipated that these kinds of technologies will exist and that they need to exist, and that's what will drive growth of Bitcoin. And so it's still very, very early adopter. Now, I don't know what the real answer is to get the average person to care about it. We were talking a little bit earlier about, how do you crack that nut? It's tough because the core values of Bitcoin and Openbazaar are things that the average user doesn't. They say they like it, but they don't care, like privacy or security. They just trust. They trust everybody. And then when things fall apart, they get hacked and Yahoo gives away all your information. Then you go, I should have never used that thing, But you are dumping your data into those companies nonstop for a long, long time. And so, I think people get fed up, but you have to provide tools that can still compete with those platforms, but yet also value privacy, security, freedom.
So privacy is a bit of your marketing.
Yeah. Bitcoiners tend to be freedom lovers, libertarians, very ideologically driven. And those are the people that we're targeting early on, because those are the ones that are going to go out and preach to the others, you need to be thinking about this, you should use this product, it's just as good, but doesn't, steal your data, everything else.
So time is probably your friend, because we will be more aware probably of those issues with privacy and also with Bitcoin and other coins.
Yeah.
And I've got one more tip to conclude. When the Netherlands joined the euro, we all got the same coin in Europe, at least all the countries that joined. But we used to have another coin, of course, and now it's back in the virtual version. It's called the Gulden, gulden.com. So you should add it to your platform probably to get success.
Great. Brian Hoffman of Openbazaar, thank you very much. It's Thursday, you are on eDay Amsterdam. What's it on Friday?
Flying back to the US. That's Friday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for hopping by.
Emerce eDay Podcast. Voor meer afleveringen ga je naar iTunes, Soundcloud of YouTube. De Emerce eDay podcast is proudly powered by voicebooking.com.